calling to order the inaugural meeting of the Rose Park Advisory Group. It sounds like we might be having a little bit of audio issue. Am I coming through okay? Can somebody, Tom Cash, can you tell me if I'm coming through okay? Thumbs up. Okay,
yeah,
that's
you're coming
good.
through fine. I see and hear you fine.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Okay. Because we are meeting electronically, I've got to start by reading the governor's order, and if someone would second my motion, then that will be the one thing we vote on. Pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 regarding electronic meetings, as extended by Executive Orders number 34, 51, and 60, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metro government, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right. And this will be the one thing we'll vote on. All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we are meeting electronically then. Thank you all for your flexibility as we learn how to deal with this. So I have sent out an agenda and a fair number of documents, and am hopeful that we can get a lot done today. And then I'm gonna turn it over to the folks that ought to be in charge. I want to begin with introductions of the folks who are on the committee. I think a few of them are still figuring out how to get in. I've sent them a number from IT if they need to call and get instructions. So hopefully everybody will be here by the end of the meeting. But I will run through the folks that I have seen are here. If y'all will introduce yourself and who you're representing and your connection, very brief connection to Rose Park, that would be great. So Calvin Bryant.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, how y'all doing? It's an honor to be on this board. My name is Councilperson Bryant. I'm from the District 17. I grew up in Edge Hill my whole life, and I went to the Rose Park Center my whole life. So I'm very connected to the Rose Park community, and I'm happy to be on the board.
Great, glad to have you. I don't see Bishop Calvin Barlow yet. Is he on? Didn't think so. Okay, we'll come back to him. Thank
Berkley,
you.
I do have a call-in user. I don't know who it is. I can unmute him if you want me to, and he may have called in.
Okay, why don't you see who that is? Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, unmute him. Unmute it now.
All right, we have one call-in user. Is that one of the committee members trying to get in? 615-269. Okay, if that's not one of the committee members, we're glad you're listening, and we'll get back to the roll call. Joyce Searcy. You're muted.
Okay, I'm muted. I'm Joyce Searcy, and I'm with Belmont University, Director of Community Relations, and I also live in District 19, been here 19 years.
Very good. Thank you. John Holmes.
I'm John Holmes. I'm Assistant Director of Parks over revenue producing facilities, which includes sports fields, which puts me in charge of overseeing the athletic fields at Rose Park.
Great, thank you for being here. And Stephen Nellums is also on the call.
Yes, I am Stephen Nellums. I am the Assistant Director of the Community Recreation Division. That includes all 27 community centers, including the Easley Community Center and the Cultural Arts Division.
Great, thank you. Ashford Hughes.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Ashford Hughes. I serve as the Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Metro Nashville Public Schools. Happy to be here with everyone today.
Very glad to have you, Ashford. Pearl Sims.
Yes, this is Pearl Sims, and I am a resident of Edge Hill neighborhood for 31 years. I'm a retired professor in public policy from Vanderbilt, and I'm proudly representing Kathy Floyd Buggs, who's actually on the line with us, and I'll do my best to serve this community any way I can.
Great, thank you, Pearl. Let's see, I saw King Hollins. You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Keith Hollins. I'm a native Nashvilleian, a lifelong resident of Edge Hill, and organized on the board of Organized Neighbors of Edge Hill.
Great, thank you. And we got a couple council members that represent the area included. So Tom Cash, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm on the meeting now.
Hey, thanks. I'm Tom Cash. I'm the fairly new councilperson for District 18, which includes Belmont University, as well as basically stuff between West End and 12th South. And I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And also want to acknowledge that we have several other council members. I appreciate them listening in as well. I see Councilmember Nancy Van Rees from District 8 and Russ Bradford from District 13, Russ Pulley from District 25, and I saw Jeff Syracuse earlier. So thank you all for tuning in. And Councilmember Quantities, District 2.
Yes, Councilmember Allen, Nancy Van Rees here. Just chime in that I'm here as the chair of Parks, Libraries, and Arts Committee.
Great, thank you for being here.
Councilmember Allen.
Yes, sir.
I know one of the call-ins starts with 615-269. I know Helen Moore's number starts with that, so that might be her.
Helen, okay, because I was expecting her. Well, Helen Moore, if you're on the call and we've unmuted one phone call. If you're on the phone, introduce yourself.
Hello.
Is that Helen? Yes, who is that?
Councilperson Burkley.
Yes.
This is Helen Moore. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I am Helen Moore, a 35-year resident of District 18. I am very vested in the community here in the Belmont Edge Hill neighborhood. My children were former participants and users of the athletic facilities there at Edge Hill, Rose Park, the football program. So I have a lot of experience and connection with this area.
Great, thank you.
Very happy to be with you.
We appreciate you serving on the committee. And I see Councilmember Freddie O'Connell also is there. Councilmember O'Connell, if you want to do a quick introduction.
Sure, thank you. I guess I don't know if you are our chair or just facilitator. Thank you, Councilman. Well, so I also have a fairly lengthy history with the park and with Edge Hill. I grew up learning how to play piano at W.O. Smith and swimming in the pool up at Rose Park. That was a common thing for kids of our age and generation to do. I know we've had some pool access issues with Metro here more recently, but now in the past 5 years, I've represented the area basically west of 12th Avenue South and north of Edge Hill Avenue as part of the Edge Hill, and have a number of constituents who use the Easley Community Center or the park.
Okay, thank you. I think that covers everybody unless Bishop Calvin Barlow is on and I haven't seen him. Speak now or let us know when you get here. Okay, I'm sure he is working on getting his way in. Well, I want to thank everyone who has agreed to serve on the committee, and for the other folks who have taken the time to listen in on this very important issue. I'm excited that this group has formed and have great hopes that once we turn the reins over to them, they can fulfill their duties with efficiency and grace. So on the agenda, I had listed next to do a very brief history of how we got here, just to make sure everybody knows where we're coming from. So Rose Park began in the 60s as a neighborhood park. It had big open space, tennis courts, picnic shelters, a community center, a playground, baseball field, softball field, basketball courts, and a swimming pool. In 2007, Belmont University asked Metro Parks if they could strike up a partnership and put in a baseball, softball, and soccer complex at no expense to Metro, which would be used by Belmont for their athletic program. Metro Parks saw that as a great way to use our limited resources to upgrade facilities and agreed to that. And this is the thing that we will come back to several times. We want to make sure now that partnerships like this, which can be beneficial, begin with community engagement. And so as part of the belated community engagement, after that process was begun, neighbors and council members worked together to come up with a number of conditions that would be part of that lease agreement. And those included the Metro would schedule the facility, ensuring access to Metro School and other community groups, and that there would be annual payments of $50,000 to the Park Community Center and the 2 adjacent schools, and that would escalate, that there would be 2 full 4-year scholarships to Belmont awarded annually to high school graduates from the Edge Hill area. There would be sharing of the concession facilities. There would be parking adequate for both the community center and the athletics. There would be an annual contract monitoring report prepared by Metro Parks, and that there would be neighborhood representation on the Belmont Neighborhood Advisory Group. Part of what the charge of this group will be to do is to look at those conditions that were put as part of the original lease agreement and to ensure that they're being fulfilled as they were intended to be. In 2017, Metro was again approached by Belmont asking about constructing an indoor batting facility. And that came through the council, again, without community participation until on the back end. And again, through a somewhat complicated process, we have now gotten to neighborhood engagement and community input with conditions that have enabled this batting facility to now be built not on Parks property, but on Metro Schools property, and for the shared use of Belmont University and Metro Schools. In terms of that agreement, that would be a 30-year lease with the possibility of 2 10-year renewals. There would be shared use of the batting facility between Belmont and Metro Schools. Belmont would handle the scheduling at Metro Schools' request, but the priority would still be given to Metro School students. Belmont would present their schedule 6 months ahead of time, and except for events that were scheduled through NCAA, would adjust where necessary when there are conflicts with Metro Schools. There would be office space put in on the first floor for a supervisor of that space, and the second floor would have access, appropriate access to Metro Schools as well. Belmont has included in this lease agreement a non-discrimination statement. They have agreed to pay $35,000 per year. This is in addition to the $50,000 that we've already mentioned. This $35,000 would go to MNPS. It also has a 3% escalator. That would support after-school programs at the batting facility, Easley Center, at Rose Park, or at the 2 schools. Belmont agreed that they would not sublet the batting facility and that they would be responsible for maintenance, utilities, and insurance on the facility, and that they would publish as part of the annual report that's already being published. They would provide information from Belmont and MNPS that would be sent to Parks that would then become a part of the annual report that's already being published, and that would include who's using which parts of the facility, what groups they are, how many hours they are, and how the funding for the after-school programs has been sent. And the final piece of that legislation, which officialized the lease agreement, was the formation of this advisory group for the specific goal of, and I will read from the enabling legislation so that I get it correct. Give me just a second to find it. Okay. It's officially said this group will meet quarterly to review all aspects of the partnerships between Belmont, MNPS, and Metro Parks to ensure that the benefits of all parties are being realized. Some of the items for consideration shall include, but shall not be limited to, prioritizing, enabling online scheduling for all Rose Park facilities, the distribution system for the Metro Parks annual report to Rose Park, facilitating neighborhood access to the park green space, park parking at Rose Park, including recommended for additional signage, park promotion and long-term planning suggestions for the Easley Center, and use of the concessions and other park facilities consistent with the lease agreement between Metro Parks and Belmont dated November 5th, 2007. So those are the pieces of information that are listed in the Metro Council ordinance. It does say that those are some items for consideration, but not limited to that. So we will leave it to this group to look back over all of the 2 lease agreements and the enabling legislation to determine exactly what items you will take up. So that was my brief history.
Council member?
Yes, ma'am. Joyce?
You mind if I say something, so since we're on the official record about the history?
Yes.
I know that you read this at the council meeting, but when I know there's a part that said that Belmont asked to put the original athletic facility at Rose Park, it was actually Mayor Purcell's idea, because what Belmont was asking to do is to put a facility at Greer, since the Sounds were going to be moving out. And Mayor Purcell said, well, why don't you put it at Rose Park? It's much closer. And it was also former director Tommy Lynch, who came to Belmont to, he called to say that before he left, he was going to have to tear down the batting facility. And he said, since you're already at Rose Park, we're just going to put it at Rose Park. And I know that I was sitting in the council meeting. This was during Mayor Barrett's term, sitting there waiting to get renominated to the library board when I saw it on the agenda, and I was very surprised. And we had not been notified that it was going to be on the agenda and did not know that it had gone through. So I think it was, if we would correct that, that part of it, because basically it was Mayor Purcell and it was former director Tommy Lynch who said that he was going to have to tear the batting facility down and it would have to be relocated.
Duly noted. I will correct that. Thank you for that clarification. I think I've described that incorrectly several times. Thank you. So I have now reviewed the enabling legislation, which was the next item on the agenda. And I apologize for my phone ringing in the background. It will stop shortly. What I'd like to do now is to open up for discussion with some guidance. The purpose of this group is not simply to meet and talk about stuff. It's to ensure that what we have put in as conditions truly happens. And I think everybody has come up with all these conditions in good faith. And people change, and people that haven't read the legislation are in charge 2 or 3 years down the line. And so having a deliberate group that will on a regular basis look back through the things that we knew were important, I think is a very effective way to ensure that we continue to meet all the qualifications. So my goal is by the end of this meeting, not necessarily to have everything in place, but for us to have, for the actual committee members, to have drafted a statement of purpose, to talk about how you're going to put your bylaws together. And Pearl Sims has provided some great documentation with some example bylaws in there. And there are also some specific language in the enabling legislation that talks to some degree about where officers will come from. And then to determine meeting schedule and where the next meeting will be. Someone might need to mute their mic, or if you want to speak, if you want to raise your WebEx hand, I will recognize you. But I would like to ask for input from the official committee members on wording for a statement of purpose. I think it's important for this group to have official words that say, you know, we this Rose Park Advisory Group have as the mission to do this, and that is something that is in front of everyone as we go forward. And then from there to talk about the mechanisms for your bylaws and electing leadership, so that by the end of this meeting, the council members who have agreed to facilitate this group will be turning it over to the official leadership of the group. I will mention that the enabling legislation specifically said that there would be 2 equal co-chairs. One of those will come from either parks or the school board representatives. But we have not come up with a mechanism on how parks and schools or this group decides who that co-chair will be. And the other co-chair will come from the 4 neighborhood representatives. So I will leave it to this body to determine whether each of those subgroups selects that person or the group as a whole selects that person. That's, you have the ability to come up with that. So first I would ask if we take perhaps 10 minutes just to put down some language with regard to statement of purpose. And for that, I would just ask if you'll raise your hands, I will recognize people so we can have an orderly discussion. If I don't see hands raised, I'll start calling on people. So that being said, and Kathy Buggs, I did not allow you to introduce yourself. So let me get you out there as one of the supervising groups that is providing a representative to this group. Can I back up and have you introduce yourself? And then if you have language you think would be appropriate to add in that, I will start with your comments.
Oh, I'm here to listen, but of course I'm Kathy Buggs, the Director of Neighborhoods, and I know that Pearl will make me very happy representing the mayor's office. So
I'll pivot to Pearl then. Thank you, Ms. Buggs. Pearl, not to put you on the spot, but I know that you've had a lot of thought about how best practices put together community oversight advisory board groups like this. And if you would be interested in kicking us off with a sentence, perhaps, I think that would be helpful.
And for the committee's sake, the paper I sent out really was just really quick thoughts about how I've seen and actually I've done compliance reviews of other cities that have done this. And actually, this is part of our curriculum at Vanderbilt, how we actually, what's the best way to put together oversight and public governance kinds of citizens committees. And so if you want to look at this, what I was trying to do was to show what best practices are out there. And on page 1 of it, we actually talk about what is the role of the oversight committees. And I think in the list of these that best practices showed is our purpose. And if we can use some of that language, I think we'll be really safe in terms of modeling for our city how other neighborhoods could use this kind of document in the committee. But I also think it'll save us a lot of time because the worst thing you can do is wordsmith by committee. So right. Somewhere we need a first draft.
Right.
It's always the dilemma of the first draft. So in paragraph 2 of this paper, after looking at a lot of cities, I must have looked at 30 cities that are known for good oversight functions. It basically boiled down to 3 things: that our job was to represent the demographic profile of the community and provide a voice. I know part of the concern we had with the 2007 lease is that we were a very different community in 2007 than we are in 2020, and we've got to broaden the voices. It's our job to also educate community members regarding what we're doing and the use of Rose Park and how we will partner with Belmont to make sure the neighborhood's needs are met, and then providing a primary process out of which we will oversee this. And we actually are a legal body, thanks very much to Berkeley's advocacy in that for the neighborhood. So I think somewhere in that we actually have some language to start the purpose. I would caution us again about getting too far out there because our enabling legislation has a fairly narrow definition of what they expect of us. So I think if we look at that second paragraph, we might be able to pull from that, and then the defining oversight functions on page 1 and 2.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Can you tell us which paragraph it is, Pearl, so we can? What is the sense? What does the paragraph start with?
Paragraph 2 starts with citizens oversight committees are a structured way. Yeah, okay. in almost all the cities, they actually call for the really to represent the demographics. And I think we have done that, both to the council and through, you Joyce live here, I live here, King lives here, lots of us live here. And then our job really is to help educate. I know in listening to a lot of the concerns over the past couple of years, the community wasn't so opposed as it was they just didn't know. We didn't know how to do these things. We didn't have an access. We wanted to schedule for example, using the concession stand. We just didn't know how to do it. So I think being able to educate, and then there really has to be a process of oversight. And I will push hard. We will end up in some kind of dysfunctional relationship with each other, or we will end up on a dead-end street if we don't have good data. You know, we can argue over ideology forever, but we can't argue over data. Numbers just don't lie, and being able to access those numbers will be critical to us. And Joyce, I certainly have the credentials, and I know y'all do at Belmont, to be able to give us some students who can help us collect data and analyze it. And I can certainly work beside you to make sure we have the data that's needed.
Great, that's great. So yeah, I think Rose, you make a good point, Pearl, that we don't need the wordsmith. But what I heard you say was that the function of the group is to represent the community, provide a voice, educate the community members, and provide primary process for oversight. So yes. Other thoughts from the rest of the group? Does that encapsulate what your understanding of your goal is? Other comments?
I just want it to be short so we can all say it.
I got it fit on 2 lines, if that sounds reasonable.
Yes, I like what you just said.
Okay, there we are. All right, we're going to use that as our starting point then. The next important thing is to talk about bylaws and leadership, because after that, I'm turning it over to y'all, and y'all can decide what your first priorities are for things to do. So again, the short paper that's best practices of other cities includes some draft bylaws, and I don't think we need to write those today. But I think we do need to get as far as figuring out what is a fair mechanism for establishing the leadership, the 2 co-chairs, and then what other members you feel like you need to have. If there needs to be a vice chair, well, you've got 2 co-chairs. I'd recommend a secretary because I'm not able to write and take good notes and run a meeting at the same time. And I think having someone who can take effective minutes is a great idea. Ashford, I see your hand up. Do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to back up for a quick second as we talk about the language about statement of purpose, and as we go into this type of document, I wanted to make sure that we have the community voices that are here that may not be, used to a lot of this jargony, language that we're using right now, that they have their voices heard in this process as well, and to offer them a chance to speak if they want some clarity on stuff, because this can get very jargony and in the weeds, and oftentimes we take for granted that everybody is looking at these type of documents on a daily basis. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone that isn't, within a government structure right now feels as though, hey, they know what steps we're taking in this first piece around utilizing statement of purpose before we start getting in the weeds elsewhere without taking into consideration their thoughts and ideas.
That's great. I appreciate that. So other folks who have, I guess, questions or further comments, if you'll raise your hand, I'm happy to recognize you. I don't see any right now, but again, we will, this group will be able to continue to meet in an open platform like this. Hopefully someday we'll be able to meet for real in person and invite the community as well. So we'll continue to be open to community input on that.
Berkley.
Yeah, who is that?
Hey, I'd like to follow up on what Ashford's saying. Oh. He's dead on. And the person I think that's on this committee that really has their ear to the ground is King. So I'd like to just specifically ask King if he thinks this document, well, where we're headed in trying to create purpose in the next steps is where he thinks the neighborhood wants to go.
Good question. King, can you respond to that, Mr. Hollins, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Yes, Pearl, I agree. I think this is a good step in that direction. And I think we we do need to be flexible enough to make appropriate changes as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
To
Absolutely.
continually reflect, make sure that our reflections are current.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, King. There's, for those of us on the committee, you have a solid voice in our neighborhood. We actually see you as one of our neighborhood fathers. So just jump in there at any point.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, anybody can jump in. Okay, good. So I would love input from this group. We have 2 co-chairs that we know we need to elect. I want to recognize Councilmember Jennifer Gamble, who I see who just joined us as well. Thank you for being here. So the two category of co-chair, one comes from either Parks or Metro Schools, and we have a representative from each of those. And I would ask for input from this group if it makes the most sense for those 2 between them to decide who that person is, or if you feel that the entire group should vote to select those. Let me hear thoughts on that first, please.
And Councilwoman Allen, say that again. So within the legislation, it was stated that one of the representatives for chair needs to be a school board representative and/or parks. Is that correct? I want to make sure I heard that clearly.
Well, not a school board. It would either be the representative for the schools, and that's you,
okay,
or the representative for Parks, and that's Mr. Holmes. So it's kind of a narrow field here. So I'm glad we got such good folks in those 2 slots. So my question to the group is, do we leave it to those 2 to decide between them, or does the group as a group want to? And again, this is something y'all can ultimately write into your bylaws, but right now we have no rules, so you, the 8 of you, can decide which way makes the most sense to do that. Any input from the group?
I hate to seem like I'm passing the buck, but I believe this fits right into, sorry, I think I'm getting some feedback.
Let me mute myself.
I think it's the feedback is gone, but I would, defer to the representative from the parks, because they'll have more day in and day out of understanding of this process, what's going on over there, and be at the facility and be mining all the facilities more often than I would be able to. So I think Mr. Holmes, I'm not sure who's the representative, but I would defer to that gentleman.
That is Mr. Holmes. Any other input from the group?
Council Lady Burkley, would you please repeat who the nominees are for the leadership?
Thank you. Good question. So we have 2 categories of leadership. One is representing the institutions. That is the institutions that are part of the lease agreement, which is Metro Schools and Metro Parks. And for Metro Schools, the designated representative is Ashley Hughes. And for Metro Parks, the designated representative is John Holmes, who has been very involved in all these discussions, which I think is also a reasonable qualification. And Mr. Hughes has suggested that he would defer to Mr. Holmes at this. I am open to the will of the group because I don't get to vote. So if someone would like to make a nomination and vote, I'll facilitate.
Burkley, if I might just jump in again. I think if we could do a roll call, or maybe just literally go down, and they may just say no comment, but this is such an important decision that I think it's going to really, we have to go on record, and that's our first action.
All right, let me get it on record. I'm going to go down through the roll then and ask for everyone's input. So I'll start with Mr. Hughes. I think you have suggested Mr. Holmes. I haven't seen him say no. I believe he is highly qualified and will do a fine job. And I believe we'll consider that a nomination. So, Mr. Hughes, if you can say yay or nay to that nomination.
I say yes to the nomination of John Holmes.
Okay, Mr. Bryant.
I say yes as well.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes. You are muted.
Well, I've served on many committees. I've never been in a leadership role. I would be honored to be in that position, and I'll do my best to fill that role if that's the way it turns out.
Thank you. You'll have a co-chair. You'll be good. All right. Miss Cersei.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
All right. Mr. Hollins.
Yes, John Holmes.
Good. Miss Sims.
Are you saying Miss Helen?
That was Miss Sims, and then I will get to Ms. Moore next.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, I think the contracts with parks makes a lot of sense.
Okay. And Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that makes it 7 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. I think that's a good choice. The second part of the co-chairship is from the neighborhood representatives. We have 3 of those 4 here. To my knowledge, if Bishop Calvin Barlow has joined us, please let us know. I don't see your name here.
Would it be appropriate, excuse me, Councilwoman Burkley?
Yes, Ms. Moore, go ahead.
Submit Bishop Calvin Barlow's name as co-chair.
In his absence, we can do that. Are there any other suggestions? The neighborhood representatives that we have here are Calvin Bryant, Calvin Barlow, Helen Moore, and King Hollins. And we have one name suggested, which is Mr. Barlow. Can you speak a little bit to your nomination, Ms. Moore?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you clearly.
I'm afraid I'm muffled. I am not familiar with Mr. Reverend Barlow, but well, Bishop, if you could tell us some about him since he's not here to represent himself.
Well, okay. Bishop Barlow has a vested interest in this district. He is a longtime resident of the area and pastor of one of the leading churches in his district.
Gotcha.
He's worked closely with getting the ordinance passed so that it came to fruition. He's dedicated to the betterment of this community.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I can tell you the little bit that I know about him.
Okay.
He's an author and he's an entrepreneur, so he has his own business but writes books. And he's a bishop. He's a bishop in the Baptist church, I think. And so he has had leadership on the church level, but also on the national levels of the church.
I think we have someone that needs to mute their mic. Thank you.
Just give me some green beans.
I think it might be Helen.
Give us some green beans too.
Getting close to supper time. Okay, that is helpful. I am a little hesitant to vote on a candidate who is not here to respond if they would accept the position or not. Are there other suggestions from other members?
How about Pearl Sims? She's a part of the neighborhood coalition, which we've not indicated, and she's has been involved with just about all of the neighborhood coalition. Has been involved with all segments of neighborhood organizations here, and I think she would make a great co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hollins. I'm gonna read from the legislation and make sure that is a possibility. It says the advisory group shall designate one neighborhood appointee to serve as one co-chair and either the Metro Parks or NNPS representatives as the second. And I believe that Ms. Sims is actually a Mayor's Office of Neighborhood appointee. So that can, let's have a quick discussion on whether that's considered a neighborhood appointee or not. What's the opinion?
Chairperson, if I could, please. This is Pearl.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate King, and he and I have been true neighbors forever, but I don't want that position simply because I feel like I need to really, with a lot of integrity, represent the mayor's office, and I don't. But in turn, I would like to represent. I would like to nominate King, who truly is. He's been involved in this thing since 2005 or 6. So.
I think that's a worthy one. Mr. Holland, would you accept that nomination?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And we've heard
some green beans. I'd like to nominate Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore is the former director of non-discrimination and compliance for TennCare for the state of Tennessee. So, yeah. She reads every word that you send her.
So, Ms. Cersei, was that a nomination or request for green beans? Okay, gotcha. Yes. So now what I'm hearing is we have three of the neighborhood appointees whose names have been suggested. 2 of them, King Holland and Helen Moore, are present and I haven't given Ms. Moore the opportunity, have been suggested, as well as Bishop Barlow, who is not here to comment on whether he would accept or not. So Ms. Moore, back to you. If your name has been nominated, would you serve?
I would accept the nomination.
Okay, that's great. We appreciate that. So what we have is two nominees who are here and have agreed that they would serve, a third who we don't know. I would propose we move forward with the ones that we know will accept the nomination. Can I see some head nods on whether that seems like this, as you put your bylaws together, you can re-elect on an annual basis. So this is not a lifetime appointment. So with that being said, I'm going to do another roll call vote of the 7 of you who are here. We have 2 nominees, I think both highly qualified and with a long history in the neighborhood, King Holland and Helen Moore. And I will begin just working my way through the list. Unless there is any further discussion. If there's further discussion, raise your WebEx hand. And has everyone found where the WebEx hand is in the lower right-hand corner? I should check on the technology pieces of that.
I have not been able to figure that out. I don't see it.
If you've called in, there's this tiny little hand that looks like that over the lower right-hand corner underneath participants, if you have your participants list showing. And if
I'm sorry, I was unable to obtain that through my technology when I logged in.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, as a call-in person, you just have to jump in and start talking. So,
well, I don't see it on my iPhone.
So on your iPhone, possibly in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little icon that says Participants Q&A. And if you click on that, then it'll open up a list of all the participants, and at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little raised hand.
I found it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I should have done the technology review at the beginning. I say with that, I will begin a roll call vote for the neighborhood co-chair representative. We're choosing between King Holland and Moore.
Councilwoman.
Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, I had my hand raised. I'm sorry. Could may I ask the committee member Cersei if she could give a brief description, or Ms. Moore herself? I believe I've heard that Mr. King, he's lived in the district for a long time. Is there a quick synopsis of Mrs. Moore? She lives in the district. I know that Mrs. Cersei says she works formerly for TennCare.
State Health. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
You recognize?
Yes, thank you for that question, for the opportunity. I am a ex-employee of the state of Tennessee. I was the director of non-discrimination contract compliance for the state's TennCare program on its implementation. I wrote and designed all of the training documents for each of TennCare's managed care organizations in accordance with federal guidelines and state statutory laws. It was my job to, my pleasure, to make sure that the TennCare program was consistently, ongoingly in compliance with all federal and state statutory legislation applicable to federal funding as a state agency.
Thank you. And can you speak?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember Cash, I see your hand raised.
I just wanted to chime in and say that I've worked with Ms. Moore on the Belmont Neighborhood Advisory Group, as I'm sure you have, Councilmember Allen. So she's been on that neighborhood advisory group for some time, and I think has a good history of the neighborhood and Belmont. And so I just wanted to, I think she's very bright and fair-minded. And so just wanted to put that out there. And I'll say I know Mr. Hollins as well, and he's been served on numerous neighborhood organizations and is a good guy as well.
Thank you. We got a tough choice, but I don't think we can go wrong. So I appreciate the further input. Any other comments for the group before I begin the roll call? I'm looking for raised hands now that I think everybody knows how to do that. Okay, seeing none. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Having heard that, I think I'm going to offer my support for Mrs. Moore.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant.
Mrs. Moore as well.
Okay. Mr. Holmes.
Ms. Moore.
Okay. Mr. Hollins.
I guess I can vote for myself.
You can. Ms. Cersei.
Ms. Moore.
Okay. Ms. Sims.
Yes, I vote for King Holland.
Okay. There is one more member. Who have I missed? Oh, Ms. Moore.
I will vote for Helen Moore myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's two highly qualified candidates, and I think that's a tough choice. The group has voted 5 in favor of Ms. Moore, 2 in favor of Mr. Holland. So we have the two co-chairs for the committee, Ms. Moore and Mr. Holmes, and they will be charged in the future with setting the agenda and running the meetings. And I will leave it to the committee at your next meeting to decide about appointing or electing secretary and setting up bylaws. I think that is beyond the scope of this, other than to perhaps agree to use the document that's been provided as a starting point that has a sample set of bylaws in it that I think would be a good starting point if there is a volunteer who would be interested in combining that sample set of bylaws with what's in the enabling legislation, at least to get that part consistent. That might be a way to get the group started. Mr. Holmes, I see your hand up now that you've learned how to do that. Would you like to speak?
Yes. The documents you keep referring to, and I apologize, I'm doing this from an iPad at home. I'm having trouble finding the documents. I found the agenda, but the bylaws and was this stuff that you sent out, or who sent out these documents?
Yes, I sent out probably 4 different emails today, so you'll have to look for all 4 of them. I apologize.
I think I only got 2 of them for some reason.
Let me, it may have been that, you should have gotten all of them. I will resend.
Councilmember Allen, this is Tom Cash. I'm happy to send it to him right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
Is it the short paper regarding the Rose Park Advisory Committee?
Yes, that is.
Is that the document we're talking about?
That is the document we were talking about.
I found it.
Great. Okay. So you got that. Okay. And okay, let's see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Cash, for offering to send it.
That's good. We're getting there. So that being said, we have done everything that is essential to get this group to begin to function. The enabling document, the enabling legislation says that this group will meet quarterly, but I think that perhaps another meeting in the near future to actually have your mechanisms in place and then to begin to talk about priorities or to get input from neighbors who have been very involved in the process already and probably have a good feel for which items are already in the works or items that have been brought to light that are already something we would want to talk about, I think would be the next order of business. I see some new hands up. Whoop, it went down. I would recognize those people. Mr. Holmes, if your hand is still up, you can unraise it by hitting the raise hand button again, or I can recognize you again. There you go. And Mr. Cash, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to just ask, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but, and I don't need tons of detail, but I'm just curious if we have any sort of a timeline about the construction, the building, and like when we expect it to be ready for use. And that, like, I think members of the committee might need to, kind of get a sense of what they're shooting for in terms of use of the facilities. I mean, I know the Rose Park field is already going and there's stuff to talk about that, but in terms of the batting facility, do we know anything about construction of that and when we expect it to be ready for facility use?
That's a great question. I see Ashford Hughes' hand up or maybe Joyce Searcy can answer that. Mr. Hughes, do you have your hand up to answer that question?
I had my hand up for another response, so I'll wait to ask my question after Councilman Cass's answer is.
Great, keep that hand up and I'll come back to you. Ms. Searcy, can you provide any information on that timeline?
I'm trying to unmute. I think it's going to be in June. And, now I'm saying I think because, we have not met with the contractors or anything since all of this was passed by council.
Gotcha.
I think they had said June.
June of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, so for sure. Great. I think that is important information. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just had a process and a procedure question as we move forward. Will this committee be binded under Metro kind of rules? Will we have to public notice meetings? Will all of our meetings be publicly broadcast? Can you give an indication of what that process looks like for this committee moving forward?
That's an excellent question. I have begun it under the assumption that it is totally appropriate for all meetings to be publicly noticed and publicly broadcast as long as we're doing virtual. The enabling legislation doesn't specify, and I think that is something that would be important to get into your bylaws as you put them together. I think it is absolutely appropriate to continue in that vein, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Ms. Sims, you want to add something to that? I hope.
Yes. It actually, I think, is allowed. It is something we need to be doing because under the boards and commissions and other representative groups, we are considered doing official business of the city.
Yeah.
So I would err on, yes, we need to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is I think you called earlier for someone that would better merge this document with the enabling legislation. And if you would work with me, I would be happy to volunteer to do that.
That would be great. Okay, we'll put that as a to-do list for that. So I think if the two of us work together on that and intend to have that ready for the next meeting, which I don't think should be next quarter. I think the next meeting should be perhaps in a month, and then I think this group will be rolling and can move to a quarterly schedule. That would be my thought on that. Ms. Buggs.
just a reminder for us to remember to elect a secretary as well.
Yes. We haven't actually talked about mechanisms for doing that. Is this group comfortable with going ahead and proceeding the same way, or getting the bylaws in place to talk about? I see one parliamentarian kind of person with an opinion. The thought would be to propose in the bylaws what that mechanism looks like, have the group agree on the bylaws, and then follow what those instructions are at the next meeting. It would be good to have someone who's taking notes madly, though, like a secretary in the meantime. Ms. Cersei, you had your hand up, but I see it's gone now. Did you have something?
It didn't pertain to that, but
I think we're good on that one. I'll go ahead and recognize you.
I was just going to ask. WebEx is kind of not intuitive. A lot of people don't use it. I know that Metro uses it. Is there any way a staff member could help the people who are not Metro people, like do a little tutorial how to use it? I mean, it's not an intuitive thing. I use it for the library, but it's not the best, I think. But is there any way that somebody could help do a little tutorial session for the non-government people so they can use it?
I think that's an excellent suggestion. So what I'm doing is beginning to draft the agenda for the next meeting, knowing that Mr. Holmes and Ms. Moore will tighten this up. And that it would include a quick WebEx lesson as part of the agenda. Does that seem like a good way to do that?
Council Lady Allen,
yes, Ms.
is there any legislative necessity for us to use WebEx as opposed to using Zoom?
Let me ask our IT whiz that question. Mr. Lyons, can you tell us if we are going to have what's considered an open meeting, do we have to use WebEx?
Very good question. If Metro ITS is hosting, our mechanism is always going to be WebEx. Now, if someone else hosted a meeting and used Zoom, I mean, of course, our network can stop them, but if we're going to host and we're going to have Metro National Network forward, we're always going to be using WebEx. So,
thank you.
Yeah, and I think, thank you, that's helpful information. So in light of the need to be an open meeting, I think having it on the Metro National Network is an important piece of that. So, but I think having a tutorial at the beginning is a suggestion.
That's understandable. Thank you.
Good question. Good question. Ms. Sims, is your hand up for a new comment?
I've got a 3-page, pretty easy document.
Great. That sounds good. Okay, I feel like we are nearing the end of the agenda that I had set for us today, which was pretty basic. I don't want this to be totally without substance, and I appreciate Mr. Cash asking the question about when the batting facility will be built, because I think that is an important piece of information. And I also feel like if the group will indulge me, and Mr. Holmes is willing to do this, I know he has already had a lot of good conversations with Edge Hill neighborhoods about some of the issues that have come up just in this process. And if you could speak briefly to changes that have been made recently, just in response to information that has come to light as we've worked through and spent so much time focusing on the original lease agreement. I would love for this group to be aware of things that are already in the works. And then maybe just to kind of have a brief, very brief discussion of what items we might think would be stuff we might be interested in tackling as the group gets going. And I will apologize for saying I will not be a member of this committee, but I will be a hanger-on as long as you let me, and a facilitator and a supporter, because I think part of your power comes from having your council members, those of you who are representing council members, have your back on items that need to be brought to the forefront, because sometimes Metro's resources are limited and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we're here to be your squeaky wheels. So Mr. Holmes, would you mind just kind of doing a quick review of some changes that have been made recently, just in light of the conversations that have begun since we started this process?
I'll be happy to. First, I want to say I'm happy to hear that you're an honor, because I think what you've done to this point is borders on miraculous.
Group effort.
And your continued effort and support will help make this successful. I did have the honor of going out and walking the park with Collins and some other neighborhood folks. We discussed a number of things that are on the agenda of items to be addressed. One particular that comes to mind, the signage for parking. We discovered that a number of signs were placed. You had the right signs, they were in the wrong places. So we have recreated those. We have also increased the number of signs along the community center to increase those spots that are specific for the community center, so that those folks that are visiting the center have more available parking spots. We've also, this goes back a ways, we increased the amount of signage in the park and tried to make the wording, and I can't remember the exact wording. It was actually a consultant that Belmont had that helped us word it, but I think it makes it more clear that this park is open to everyone. One of the biggest things that came from my conversation was people have a lot of different issues, but it all stems back to the fact that the perception is that is not a neighborhood park, it is a Belmont park. And I think if there's one thing that we can focus on is helping to find ways to change that perception. A couple of additional things we've done, we placed some additional picnic tables in green spaces to make that more of a welcome area and for people to have a place to recreate. I'm trying to think what else. In regards to the concession stand, for those of you that are not familiar, when the concession stand, the way the lease is written and what was built are not in cooperation with each other. We currently have a concessionaire, or I should say, Belmont currently uses a concessionaire. We don't even have a concessionaire there for park activity. Belmont doesn't care. We don't care. If we can find a community organization that is interested in operating the concession stand, we can take care of that. This does not have to be shared. It can't be shared. That's the problem. It's not the type of concession stand that can be used for a concessionaire and for a community group. So if from this committee, we can find a group that's interested in operating that, that's another positive that's going that way. But I go back to the one thing that stuck in my head, and the gentleman I work closely with that's over the sports, he's more daily involved with the sports fields and the rentals and with dealing with Belmont. But the one thing from our last conversation out there was the perception. What can we do to change the perception and make the neighborhood patrons, make all of Nashville, not just the members of Edge Hill community, but make everyone understand this is a park. It's an Edge Hill park, and while Belmont utilizes it and paid to build it and made this beautiful facility, it's there for the citizens to use. And so that's would be one of my main goals moving forward. And I think I've hit on most of it, unless you can think of anything else, Burkley.
That hits most of the things that I heard come up. The other one that I think was a resounding theme is just ensuring that there's green space that people can get to play on, and that they know how to do that, which I think you said. So I appreciate you reiterating that. We are at about an hour, which is probably what our time should be. I would love for other members of the group just to throw out a couple of other goals. This is not the end all and be all, but consistent with the statement of purpose that we talked about. And I have a charge to everyone on the committee in line with what Ms. Sims said at the beginning about representing the community and educating the community. I think a breakdown that we've had in the past is the committee can meet and know what they're doing, but if they don't spread that word back to the neighborhood groups, those groups don't know what's happening. So I will charge everybody on the neighborhood representatives or just the neighborhood residents, y'all will make a concerted effort to attend the community meetings and report specifically, on where we are and where we're going. I think that would be really important. So I want to recognize anyone else who has their hands up. Mr. Cash.
I was just curious. I know some schools use the sports field, and the issue of concessions, did the schools ever, when they have games, ever use the concessions? Are they allowed to, or not allowed to, or they just choose not to?
The little thing I know about that is when the park was built and the principals were very much involved in opening the park and they used it. I know that Rose Park Middle School did use it. And I think that when the principal left, people have other priorities. It was not as much of a priority. I don't know even what happened to the soccer team that she had. But I know that she used it religiously. So,
yes, I think concessions will be a big topic for this group to figure out a more equitable arrangement on. I think there's some holes there that can be filled. Other priorities that people are already aware of. Mr. Bryant. Let's see. There you go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Just going back to what Mr. Holmes was talking about, like with the community and things like that. I'm somebody that's in the community every day in the Edge Hill homes. And a lot of the times, like, people were just not aware of what's going on. So now that we have representatives that's involved now, I can be down there more, just really telling the community that they are welcome. They don't have to feel a certain way, because even me, honestly, we wasn't used to nice things being there like the park is now. So, people kind of second guess should they be up there or not. So, it's all about communication. So I'll make sure I get that communication out in those homes and things like that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other items of business? I think we should propose a meeting time a month from now, just so people can get it on their calendar, and then review assignments and then anything else other people have that they want to throw in. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I do want to piggyback off of Mr. Bryant and Mr. Holmes. I do think it'll be vital for this committee to also have written down, because we know when it's written down, it becomes, what we actually measure. I think we do need to have a community engagement, but also with the students and the kids in that community. We need to create a mechanism that we're hearing from them on a continuous basis as we go through this process. We have the schools over there that Councilman Cash talked about, but I think it's vitally important that we hear from and we create a mechanism to hear from the youth in the area so that we know what their needs are and that we know that we're fulfilling them in this process, along with that community engagement in a substantive, consistent manner, so that everybody feels along the way from soup to nuts they have been involved in this process. I think that's vital as a part of our governance moving forward, that we actually create these mechanisms going forward.
I think we might need a subcommittee in charge of that might need a chair, that might be the person that suggested that. Would you would you be willing to at least make sure that item happens?
If the broader committee, would allow me to do that, I would be honored to.
All right. Do we need a roll call vote on that, or can we just get a bunch of head nods? Or thumbs up? Okay, I'm gonna write that into the minutes. Ms. Sims, is your hand up for a new comment?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that what Ashford is bringing up to us is important, but I think we have to make sure that we respect the bylaws. So I think we can bring it to attention, but to actually have a vote on it right now would be, without the presence of bylaw, is probably out of order.
Okay, gotcha. So just to make note that the bylaws might possibly recommend that. Good point.
I love the idea, though, talking to the kids. When we, a group of students did some focus group with the kids, they have a lot of ideas of what they want to do.
Yeah. True. That is very true. Good. I just want to make sure this group is feeling empowered to do what needs to be done. So we'll ensure that is in the draft of the bylaws, and we'll do that. Would a meeting a month from now be, I mean, if we grab this same time, perhaps, is that a reasonable starting point? I can send out a doodle poll. That would be Thanksgiving, so that's probably not good. Would early December be possible, or is that, our holidays are going to be strange anyway? Perhaps a week later, the week after Thanksgiving? That'd be council meetings.
The week of December the 7th.
Are you doing December 7th, council lady?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to a calendar.
I think.
Well, is the 23rd, is that Thanksgiving weekend, or?
November the 23rd is the week of Thanksgiving, but it is that Monday.
That Monday. What does the group think about that? I don't hear a bunch of no's.
I prefer early December.
Okay. So not the 30th, because the 30th would be right after Thanksgiving.
I prefer after. I agree with Mr. Holland. I agree after, not the week of. Too much preparation.
December 7th would be the next Monday. How does that sound? Next meeting, December 7th. That will be tentative, but let's use that as the starting point.
Same time.
Same time? Yeah, does 5 o'clock work? Is suggestions for earlier or later? Seems like almost everybody made it. Let's start with that. Mr. Bryant, do you have any new comment, or is that hand up from early?
That was up from early.
Okay, easy to do. Mr. Hollins, I see your hand up.
I prefer a little earlier than 5. Maybe 4 o'clock. That's just me. If it's, I'll go along with the group, but personally, I prefer something a little early.
Gotcha. Other folks? And I can send out a doodle poll if, is that Mr. Holmes?
I just wanted to add one more thing on my earlier. So as far as the time, I'm good with 4 or 5 o'clock.
Okay. 4 or 5. All right. I'll send out a poll on that. And what did you want to add your other comments?
One other that I think this committee needs to know. One other concern was there had been an incident where there had been a conflict where some public were on the field, and Belmont was on the field, and it wasn't an ideal situation. And from that, Belmont has purchased and now posts signage notifying the public that at this time they're utilizing the field. This way, there isn't a question. And I've already heard several comments back that the folks that live around there like that, so that they know whether or not it's being used and what the purpose is. So
that's the flip side of that, is when the sign is not there, then that's an indication that anyone can be on the field.
Correct.
That seems like,
unless there's a group out there with a permit, which they then can show to whoever's out there.
Right. That's true for all athletic fields.
Right, exactly. That's across the county.
Gotcha, those reservations for. Okay, any other items of business? I have failed to give Councilmember Freddie O'Connell the opportunity to speak in terms of the meeting other than introducing himself, and he is one of the area council members. Do you have anything else you would like to add, Councilmember O'Connell?
Sorry, in the middle of making dinner here. No.
That's okay, I figured you were multitasking, so. Good, I appreciate you being part of the call. Okay, any other comments from anyone? Okay, so just to review, Ms. Sims and I are going to work on the beginnings of the bylaws and perhaps putting those 4 pieces of the advisory group's statement of purpose into a sentence that's short enough that Ms. Cersei can remember it. And and everyone is going to look over all the documents that were sent with an idea of thinking about what the goals for this committee would be. And probably not at this point, but at some point in the near future, this group will do community engagement to touch base with both the communities and the school groups that we're trying to serve. Anything else? All right, I will thank everyone again. This is such an important group to form, and I think that we can make this private-public partnership work as a model for the rest of the city. And I would love to see that happen. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and we'll convene again in a little more than a month. Thank you all so much.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.